It was an ordinary day, just like any other. I was heading home after work, thinking about the dinner my wife and I had planned. My thoughts revolved around the usual things, how the day had gone, the tasks I had completed, and I was looking forward to a quiet evening at home. But as I approached our house, I noticed something unusual. The living room lights were on, and through the window, I could see two shadows. I walked in and immediately heard laughter. It was her laughter, the same laughter I used to hear every day but had noticed less frequently in recent weeks. The sound was coming from the kitchen, accompanied by a deep, familiar voice. It was the voice of my best friend, Jack. I paused for a moment, trying to process why he was here. Usually, we'd let each other know if we were planning to meet, but this time, I hadn't heard anything from him. Why had he come over unannounced? And what were they doing together? When I entered the kitchen, the scene before me stirred a mix of emotions. They were sitting at the table with cups of coffee, leaning in close to one another. She was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in a long time, her eyes alight with energy. Jack was talking, and she laughed, placing her hand lightly on his shoulder. My heart tightened. It all seemed too close, too intimate. Her hand on his shoulder? Her gaze? It felt off. "Oh, hi, honey," she said, noticing me. Her voice was warm, but there was something else in it, something I couldn't quite place. Jack turned quickly, looking a bit uneasy. "Hey, man, how's it going?" he said, standing up from his chair. "Good," I replied, trying to mask my surprise. But questions swirled in my mind. What was he doing here? Why did they seem so comfortable together? "We were just chatting," she said with a casual smile. Jack was in the area and decided to stop by for a coffee. In the area? I thought, but said nothing. Something about her explanation didn't sit right with me. I joined them at the table, but I couldn't shake the shift in the atmosphere. Their dynamic changed immediately. Where before there had been ease and laughter, now there was restraint. Their conversation became stilted, polite, as if my presence had altered everything. Jack finished his coffee, glanced at his watch, and said he had to go. "All right, see you later," I said, trying to appear relaxed. But inside, something had shifted. When the door closed behind him, I turned to her. "Why didn't you tell me he was coming over?" I asked. She answered quickly, almost too quickly. "I didn't know. He just stopped by." Her response didn't sit well with me. Something about the situation felt wrong. Her smile, her gaze, the way they had talked to each other. It didn't seem accidental. That was the moment I first felt like a secret had entered our home, and I had no idea how far it would go. The next morning seemed ordinary, but something about her behavior continued to bother me. She was always warm and affectionate, but today her words felt dry, almost mechanical. As I sipped my coffee at the kitchen table, she scrolled through her phone, smiling at something on the screen. It was the kind of smile that caught my attention. Not her usual one, but a smile I hadn't seen in a while. "Who is it?" I asked casually. She quickly locked her phone and placed it face down on the table. "Oh, it's just Lisa. We're talking about something for work," she said, not even looking at me. Her answers sounded plausible, but the speed with which she hid her phone unsettled me. We had never hidden things like that from each other before. I remembered when her phone used to sit openly on the couch, when she never cared if I saw her messages. But now everything seemed different. Throughout the day, her coldness only grew. She was distant, speaking in short phrases and avoiding eye contact. For dinner, she ordered takeout instead of cooking, something she used to love. "I've been really busy," she explained when I asked about it. Then I started to think about Jack's words from a few months ago. He had confided in me about how hard his divorce had been, how he needed time to process everything and figure out his emotions. At the time, it had seemed perfectly reasonable, but now I couldn't help but wonder. Was he really seeking solitude? Or was he looking for someone to lean on? That evening, as we sat together in the living room, I decided to bring it up. I casually mentioned his visit the previous day. By the way, I began, trying to sound nonchalant. Why did Jack stop by yesterday? Was there a reason? Or did he just decide to drop in? Her reaction was interesting. She hesitated for just a moment, as if considering her answer. Then she smiled faintly and said, "We were just talking. Nothing special." But her tone was different. It was too calm, too measured, as if she were trying to convince me that everything was fine. "Just talking," I repeated, maintaining the same neutral tone. "Yes, he wanted to talk about some of his problems. That's all," she replied, and abruptly changed the topic of conversation. I didn't ask anything else, but inside, my suspicion was growing. Her evasive answers, strange behavior, the phone that was now always with her. I didn't want to believe it, but something told me she was hiding something. These thoughts wouldn't leave me, even when I went to bed. Her phone was on her nightstand, screen down, and I could hear messages coming in one after another. She didn't reply to them, but neither did she mute the sound, which seemed even stranger to me. I lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, thinking, maybe I'm just imagining things? Maybe I'm just paranoid? But my intuition was screaming at me that something was wrong, and now I had to find out what it was. Day by day, I started noticing more little things that began to add up to something much bigger. My best friend, Jack, suddenly became overly concerned. He started texting me more often. Usually, we talked once or twice a week, but now, every day, I received something from him like, "How are things at home?" Or, "How are you and your wife spending your time?" It seemed strange. Why was he suddenly so interested in my marriage? At first, I tried to ignore it, but each new message only added fuel to the fire of my suspicions. One day, I decided to come home a little earlier than usual. I had a strange premonition I couldn't explain. Opening the door, I heard soft music coming from the living room, her favorite playlist. I walked in and saw her sitting on the couch with her phone in hand. She was looking at the screen and smiling. When she saw me, her reaction was immediate. She quickly locked the phone and put it in the bag next to her. "You're home early?" she asked, trying to smile, but her voice sounded slightly nervous. "Yeah, decided to leave early," I replied, watching her reaction closely. Her movements became too quick, as if she was trying to hide her confusion. I noticed another detail. On the coffee table next to the couch was a bottle of new perfume. It was a scent I had never smelled on her before. She had always been loyal to one fragrance, saying it reminded her of our early days together. But now this new, sweet, and slightly provocative aroma made me wonder. "New perfume?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Oh, yeah, decided to try something new," she replied, not looking at me. She busied herself with her phone, which now remained tightly gripped in her hands. And then I noticed another detail that wouldn't let me rest. In the bathroom, while washing my hands, I saw a drying line with lingerie I had never seen before. It was expensive lingerie with lace and intricate details. And most importantly, I had never seen her wear it at home. These little things began piling up in my mind, forming a disturbing picture. New perfume, lingerie, the phone that was now always with her. She constantly received messages, and though I had never tried to look at her phone before, now I wanted to know who was behind those messages. "Looking for something?" she suddenly asked as I stood in the bathroom, staring thoughtfully at the lingerie. Her voice sounded calm, but I felt the tension. "No, just admiring," I replied, trying to hide my thoughts. But her gaze remained sharp, as if she knew I had started suspecting something. It was too much. I couldn't ignore all these signals. She was clearly hiding something, and now I was determined to find out what it was. The viewers feel this tension alongside the protagonist, as the mysteries only multiply, but there are no answers. What if the truth turns out to be entirely different from what he expects? After all these suspicious details, I realized I just couldn't sit idly by. Hundreds of questions spun in my head, unanswered. What is she hiding? Why is her phone always with her? Who is texting her? And most importantly, why has she changed so much? I decided to act. If she wasn't ready to tell me the truth, I would find it out myself. That night, when she fell asleep, I acted cautiously, not to wake her. Her phone was on the nightstand next to her bed, as always, screen down. I quietly picked it up, feeling my heart pounding so hard it seemed like she might hear it. I quickly installed a tracking app. It was a simple app that transmitted information about her location. I felt guilty for invading her privacy, but on the other hand, I saw no other way to uncover the truth. The next day, I noticed another detail that added fuel to the fire of my suspicions. At work, I accidentally overheard a conversation between Jack's colleague who said he took a few days off to rest. These words caught me off guard. Jack constantly complained about being overloaded with work and said he couldn't even find time to relax. Why did he take time off? And why didn't he tell me about it? Now I had two mysteries: her strange behavior and Jack's unexpected leave. I decided to track her movements using the installed app. My anxiety grew with every passing minute. I hoped to find some simple explanation that would dispel all my suspicions. For several days, I saw her phone in its usual places: work, home, the store. Nothing out of the ordinary. But one evening, when she said she'd be staying late at the office for an important meeting, I decided to check the app. My heart stopped when I saw that her location wasn't near the office, but in the city center, not far from a district with hotels. I couldn't believe my eyes. Why was she there? What was she doing there? I tried to find an explanation to calm myself, but only the worst scenarios swirled in my mind. I opened the app's map and carefully watched her movements. Her phone stayed in that area for quite some time. It wasn't just a quick visit. She had stopped there. My palms were sweating as I sat and stared at the screen. Maybe it's just a coincidence, I told myself, trying to calm down. But my intuition screamed that it wasn't. I decided to check it out myself. That evening, while she was still out, I got in the car and headed to the city center. My heart was pounding so hard that I could feel it in my temples. When I got to the hotel district, I spotted her car parked near one of the hotels. I sat in my car, watching the hotel entrance, feeling the tension become unbearable. I didn't know what I would find, but I felt like I was getting closer to something that would change everything. The viewers at this moment feel the same tension as the protagonist. Where did she go? What is she doing in that hotel? And is he ready for the truth he might uncover? The next morning, after seeing her car near the hotel, I couldn't find peace. 100 questions swirled in my head. She acted as usual, calm, confident, even cheerful, but that only made me worry more. Everything seemed too perfect, and I knew I had to find some proof. At lunch, while she was in the shower, I saw her bag on the table. My heart raced as I slowly opened it, trying not to leave any traces. Inside was a mess of receipts, cosmetics, and keys. But among this chaos, I noticed one piece of paper that stood out: a receipt from a flower shop. I picked up the receipt and started reading. It listed an enormous bouquet adorned with exotic flowers and the date, just a few days ago. My head started spinning. That bouquet was clearly expensive, but I had never seen it at home. Who was it for? I put the receipt back, but the feeling of unease didn't leave me. Something urged me to dig deeper. And then I noticed something shiny in the small inner pocket of her bag. I took it out and my heart froze. It was a pendant, an unfamiliar pendant with a thin chain engraved with the letters J and A. J and A. My name starts with J, but I couldn't figure out what it meant. It wasn't her initial. I tried to recall if we had ever bought something like this together, but in vain. I had never seen this pendant before. Then I remembered how a few days ago, she had adjusted her shirt, and I had noticed something shiny on her neck. She always wore the pendant I had given her on our anniversary. But this time, it was something else. She hadn't even mentioned a new piece of jewelry. Who was this pendant for? And what did those letters mean? My patience was running out. The flower shop receipt, the pendant, the hotel, her strange behavior. All of it painted too obvious a picture. I couldn't keep it inside anymore. I decided I had to talk to Jack, my friend, the only person who might have some answers. That evening, I invited him out for a beer. We sat at a table in a quiet pub, and I tried to start the conversation without sounding suspicious. Hey, how are you doing? You mentioned being swamped with work, but it seems like you've been relaxing a bit lately, I asked, trying to sound casual. Jack looked a bit surprised, but quickly replied, "Oh no, I just took a couple of days off to rest. Sometimes you need to step away from the office, you know." But I heard a note of tension in his voice. He was too calm, too confident. I decided to push further. "By the way, you stopped by our place recently, right? I was just wondering if there was something you wanted to talk about. You seemed a bit different." This time he couldn't hide his concern. His hand gripped his beer glass a bit tighter, and he quickly averted his gaze. "No, everything's fine. I just wanted to see you guys, that's all." But I could see he was hiding something. My head spun even more. I felt like I was on the brink of discovering something significant, but the whole picture remained blurry. The receipt, the pendant, Jack's strange behavior. It no longer seemed like a coincidence. I knew I had to dig deeper to uncover what was really going on. But was I ready to face the truth? At this moment, viewers are holding their breath, waiting to see what step the hero would take next, and whether he would uncover the secret that had eluded him for so long. The next day, I decided to invite Jack over for dinner. I told myself this was my chance to find answers. But the main thing was to act as if everything was fine. No suspicions, no hints that I knew or suspected anything. I wanted to observe him, his behavior, his reactions. Jack arrived on time, as always. He greeted me as if nothing had happened, smiling and trying to appear relaxed. But I already knew him well enough to notice the small details. His smile was slightly strained, and his hands gripped the bottle of wine he brought more tightly than usual. "Dinner looks great," he said, sitting down at the table. I served steak, his favorite dish, and poured us each a glass of wine. We talked about trivial things, work, sports, even a bit about politics. But every topic seemed superficial, like a protective layer hiding something deeper. I decided to give him time to relax. Gradually, he began to talk more, but I noticed how he avoided mentioning my wife. It was strange because she had always been part of our conversations before. "How's work going?" I asked, steering him toward a more familiar topic. "Yeah, everything's fine, just a bit busy," he replied, but his voice trembled slightly. I pretended not to notice, but inside I felt the tension growing. I wanted to hear more. So, after a few sips of wine, I carefully changed the subject. "Listen, Jack," I began, keeping my tone as even as possible. "You've been coming over quite often lately. It doesn't bother me, but is something going on?" He immediately tensed up. His hand froze halfway to the glass, and he looked away. "No, nothing like that. Just thought it would be nice to spend time with you," he said, trying to sound calm. But I could already see he was nervous. His words were too vague, too cautious. I decided to push a little harder. "We're friends, right?" I said, looking him straight in the eye. "You'd never do anything to betray me." He met my gaze for only a second, then looked away again. His hands began to tremble slightly, and he quickly took a sip of wine, as if trying to buy some time. "Of course not, buddy," he finally said, but his voice was weak. It wasn't the confidence I expected to hear. I leaned forward, making my voice a little quieter but insistent. "Then tell me, what's going on between you and my wife?" Those words hung in the air like thunder before a storm. He didn't respond immediately. His face paled, and I could see him struggling to gather his thoughts. "I don't know what you're talking about," he finally said, but his words were unconvincing. "You don't?" I pressed, holding his gaze. Because it seems to me there's something I don't know, something you don't want to tell me." His silence was almost deafening. He stared at the table, avoiding my gaze while I sat there, feeling the tension in the room reach its peak. "Jack, I want to hear the truth. We're friends, but I need to know what's going on," I said, trying not to lose control of my voice. His reply was short. "It's not what you think." But those words only deepened my suspicions. What exactly did he mean, and why couldn't he say it outright? The next day, I woke up with a heavy feeling in my chest. The conversation with Jack had only added fuel to the fire of my suspicions. He hadn't said anything directly, but his nervousness, avoiding my gaze, and inability to answer direct questions spoke for themselves. I took my phone and opened the tracker I had installed on my wife's phone. Her location was the usual: home, then the office. But in the evening, just like a few days ago, her phone was back in the city center in the hotel district. My heart began to race again. This time, I couldn't wait any longer. I decided to go there and find out what was really happening. Her words about working late echoed in my head, but now they seemed empty. I couldn't trust her words anymore. I needed proof. I arrived at the hotel 20 minutes later. Her car was parked in the same spot where I had seen it before. It was an expensive hotel with a shiny facade, large glass doors, and a doorman at the entrance. Everything about it screamed luxury and discretion. I left my car nearby and stood on the sidewalk, waiting. A few minutes later, I saw her. She was walking toward the hotel, looking calm and confident. Her hair was perfectly styled, and she was wearing an elegant dress I had never seen before. She stopped at the entrance, glanced around as if checking if anyone was watching her, and then went inside. I watched this scene, feeling as though my world was literally falling apart. Everything in her behavior suggested that this wasn't a work meeting. It was something else. My heart was beating so fast that I could barely breathe. When she disappeared behind the doors, I decided to act. I entered the hotel, trying to appear as calm as possible. The lobby was luxurious, with large crystal chandeliers, plush sofas, and friendly staff at the reception desk. I approached the desk, holding my phone as if checking something important, and said, "Excuse me, I'm a bit late for a meeting with my wife. She just went upstairs, but I don't know which room she's in. Could you tell me?" The girl behind the desk looked at me with a polite smile. "What's her name?" she asked. I gave her my wife's name, trying not to show my anxiety. She quickly checked something on the computer. "She's in room 714. That's on the 7th floor," she said, adding, "You'll need a key to use the elevator. I'll prepare a card for you now." My heart stopped. I now knew for sure that she was there. But what exactly was she doing in that room? And was she alone? The girl handed me the card, and I headed to the elevator. As the doors closed, I felt the air around me grow thick. The 7th floor. A few seconds that felt like an eternity. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped into the hallway. Room 714 was at the end. I walked slowly, trying to gather my thoughts, but every step was heavy. Everything I had seen and felt over the past few days had now brought me to the moment when the truth would be revealed. When I reached the door, I stopped. Muffled voices could be heard from inside. One of them was hers, and the other a male voice that sounded all too familiar. It was Jack's voice. My hand froze on the door handle. I felt adrenaline surging through my body. My world was on the edge, and I knew there would be no turning back after this moment. Standing in front of room 714, I felt the tension in my body reach its limit. Voices were coming from behind the door. First I heard her laughter, light, happy, the kind it used to be when we first started our relationship. But now, that laughter felt like a knife piercing my heart. Then I heard another voice. Deep, confident, familiar. It was Jack. The same Jack who had sat across from me at dinner just yesterday, claiming there was nothing between them. My heart clenched with every word that came through the door. I couldn't wait any longer. My fear and anger turned into determination. I raised my hand to knock, but stopped. No, I wanted to enter immediately, without warning, to uncover the truth. I approached the reception desk, where the same girl who had given me the card greeted me. "Excuse me, but the room door is locked. Can I get help to enter?" "I forgot the key," I said, trying to hide the tension in my voice. She nodded and called a staff member, who arrived a minute later with a master key. "Let me know when you're ready," he said, standing next to me. I nodded and gestured for him to open the door. When the door opened, I saw them. They were sitting at a small table in the center of the room. On the table were glasses of wine and a few plates of snacks. She looked stunning in that dress, her face glowing with satisfaction. And Jack sat across from her, with that slightly guilty smile I had seen before. My breath stopped. For a moment, I just stood there, frozen, as they both looked at me. Her smile faded, and Jack stood up, as if about to explain something. "What's going on here?" I asked, trying to keep my composure, but feeling the anger break through in my voice. She looked at me with a confused expression, then at Jack, and suddenly said, "It's not what you think." "Not what I think," I shouted, taking a step toward the table. "You're sitting here together in a hotel, drinking wine, and I'm supposed to believe everything's fine?" She stood up, her hands trembling slightly. "Listen to me, this can all be explained. It's a surprise for you." I laughed bitterly. "A surprise for me? Is this how you do it? In a hotel with my best friend?" She took a deep breath, as if trying to gather her thoughts. "Yes, a surprise for you. We've been working on this for months." I glanced at the table and finally noticed what I hadn't seen earlier through the haze of emotions. A stack of documents, samples of papers spread out, and even a few blueprints. "What is this?" I asked, pointing at the documents. Jack joined the conversation. "Listen, man, it really is a surprise. We were preparing a project for you. It's your idea, the business you've been dreaming about for years. We wanted to finish everything by your anniversary." I paused, trying to understand what he meant. She picked up the papers and handed them to me. "These are the documents for the space we rented for your business. We knew you wouldn't do it yourself because you always put your dreams on hold. So we decided to do it for you. We've even started planning the office design." I looked at her, trying to figure out if this was true. Her eyes were filled with emotion, and I felt my anger gradually turning into shame. "And the pendant and the flowers," I began, but she interrupted. "The pendant is part of the gift, Jack, and I ordered it specially for you. J&A stands for Jack and Anna, our team that made this possible for you." My heart clenched. I felt a wave of guilt washing over me. I had let my suspicions destroy the trust we had built over the years. Jack added, "I knew you'd start suspecting something, but we wanted to keep it a surprise. Maybe we did go too far." I lowered my head, feeling my emotions swirling in chaos. I didn't know what to think. "I'm sorry." She stepped closer and took my hand. "Now you know the truth. And you know how much we wanted to make you happy." I sat in silence, looking at the documents on the table. They seemed both foreign and familiar at the same time. In my wife's eyes, I saw excitement, and in Jack's, a certain discomfort. I took a deep breath and asked, "Why did you decide to do this behind my back? Do you realize how it all looked?" My wife gently placed her hand on mine, as if trying to calm me. "Listen, I know it looks strange, and I understand why you might have thought the worst. But I did it because I wanted to make you happy. Jack and I have been discussing this for months. We wanted your dream to become a reality, even if you were afraid to take that step yourself." Her words began to form a clearer picture. I remembered how many times I had talked about my business, about the idea of starting my own venture, but always found excuses to postpone it. "Not now, too risky, it's not the right time." Those were my constant phrases. "The flowers," she continued, "were part of the decor for your future office. We picked them out with the designer to create a cozy atmosphere. I know you like everything to look perfect, and I wanted this place to be special for you. I recalled the receipt from the flower shop and felt another wave of shame. I had spent so much time building imaginary scenarios of betrayal, but I never considered that it could be something good. And the pendant, she added with a slight smile, is a gift. Jack and I decided to do something symbolic. J. stands for Jack and Anna. We wanted you to know that this is our joint effort, that we support you and believe in you. Jack finally broke the silence. His voice was quiet but sincere. Buddy, I know how all of this looks. And honestly, I felt awkward this whole time. I hated having to keep it a secret, but we wanted it to be a surprise. You know me. I'd never do anything to betray your trust. He looked at me, and I saw genuine regret in his eyes. I know how hard it was for you to decide whether to take this step in business. And I wanted to help because I saw how much you dreamed about it. We wanted to give you the push you needed. I sat there, silently listening, feeling waves of emotions overwhelming me. Anger, confusion, relief, and shame all mixed together. You don't understand how it all looked from my side, I finally said. The flowers, the pendant, the hotel, all these secrets. It all made me think I was losing both of you. My wife placed her hand on mine again. I'm sorry we made you feel that way. That wasn't our intention. We just wanted you to see how much we believe in you and your dreams. Jack added, I'm really sorry, man. But now you know everything. You have the space, you have our support. All that's left is for you to take the first step. I looked at the documents in front of me, and at these two people who had been by my side for so long. They had truly done this for me. They had taken the risk, invested time and effort to bring to life what I had been too afraid to start myself. I don't know what to say, I finally uttered. My wife smiled. Just say thank you, and promise you'll never doubt yourself or us again. A few weeks after that tense night at the hotel, I stood in the new space that was now officially my first business. The large, bright room with tall windows was filled with festive conversations, laughter, and music. It was opening day, the day I had dreamed about for years but never dared to take the first step toward. Guests came and congratulated me. They raised glasses to success, discussed the office design, and talked about my future plans. Everyone was happy for me. But standing in that crowd, I couldn't fully relax. Deep inside, a trace of doubt remained. My wife approached me, smiling. She looked stunning in a new dress, her eyes glowing with pride. So, how does it feel? You're an entrepreneur now, she said, taking my hand. I looked at her and felt a wave of warmth pass through me. It's incredible. I don't even know how to thank you for everything you've done, I replied. Jack also came over with a glass in hand. He looked as relaxed as ever, but now I saw something more in his eyes, a genuine pride in being part of this project. You earned this, buddy. We just helped you see what you couldn't see in yourself, he said, raising his glass. I raised my glass and thanked them both. You have no idea how much this means to me. I was such a fool to doubt you. But now I understand how close and important you both are to me. Everyone raised their glasses, and the momentary noise in the room made me smile. I felt the wave of guilt gradually dissolving. Their efforts, their support, their surprise, it was more than I could have hoped for. But then I noticed something that made me tense up again. It was a small moment, a brief glance between Jack and my wife. It lasted only a second, but there was something in it that I couldn't explain. It wasn't just a smile or a sign of pride. It was something more, something intimate. I immediately pushed those thoughts away, forcing myself to believe it was just my imagination. After all, they had worked together on this project, planned together, created all of this together. Of course, there could be some mutual understanding between them. That's normal, right? But the longer I thought about it, the more I felt that same feeling resurfacing inside me, the one I had felt a few weeks ago. Did I really know the whole truth? Was there really nothing more between them? Throughout the evening, I watched them, trying not to show my thoughts. They talked, laughed, but maintained a professional demeanor. No suspicious gestures, no words that could confirm my doubts. And yet, something didn't let me rest. When the evening ended and the guests began to leave, I stayed alone in my new office. I stood in the middle of the room, looking at all the beautiful details they had created for me. But inside, I felt that this story wasn't over yet.